Broadcasting across the Golden State, this is Inside California Politics.
Thanks for joining us for Inside California Politics. I'm Frank Buckley in Los Angeles.
And I'm Nikki Lorenzo in Sacramento. Governor Gavin Newsom is responding to the recall effort against him for the first time since the Secretary of State announced the signature threshold has been met to force a special election.
We're going to defeat the recall. We're going to defeat the recall. We're going to focus on getting people back to work. We're going to focus people getting back fully in-person instruction in our schools. We're going to get this economy moving again. And more important than anything else, we're going to get vaccines in people's arms so we can do all of that faster.
Joining us now is our Capitol insider, Ashley Zavala. Ashley, the governor making a comment about the recall this week, but it's really one of the few times we've heard him even address the recall. Any reaction from his team?
Yeah, I mean, Team Newsom is in campaign mode, so I will say that the anti-recall campaign and Governor Newsom's campaign has been really responsive to all of these recall developments and updates, but they've been overall just sticking with their main talking point that this is a Republican-led recall and an effort to install a Trump supporter into office.
Ashley, what are you hearing from other Democrats behind the scenes? Is there any talk about possibly putting another Democrat out there to ensure a Republican does not get elected?
Yeah, for now, Democrats are really sticking together. Right now, with California's progress in economic reopenings and with the suppression of the virus, there seems to be no appetite to prop up a Democrat challenger to Governor Newsom. But some Democrats have pointed out to me that right now we're really early in this process, too early for any Democrats to come forward, because that would give Team Newsom plenty of time to undermine any inter-party campaign.
All right, let's talk about the Republicans. What are you hearing in private about them? How do they feel about this recall? And considering the candidates right now, is there any certain one that they're picking?
Yeah, Republicans do take this recall really seriously, and they do say that this is an opportunity for them to possibly take the state's highest office. I can't speak for all Republicans, but a name that I consistently hear over and over again is Kevin Faulconer's name, one that some Republicans that I do talk to have said that this is a really serious candidate. This is someone with a political algorithm, per se, that meets kind of the requirements to be a worthy opponent for Governor Gavin Newsom, just with his tenure as a moderate Republican and as San Diego's former mayor.
Our Capitol insider, Ashley Zavala. Ashley, thanks for joining us.
The threshold of verified signatures reported by California counties has officially been met for the recall of Governor Gavin Newsom. The valid signatures now total more than 1.6 million, passing the 1.5 million signatures required. This now triggers the next phase of the recall process. It's a 30 business day period for voters who've changed their minds about the recall to submit written requests to county registrars of voters to remove their names from the recall petitions. At least 130,000 signatures would have to be withdrawn to stop the recall from moving forward. Counties will have 10 days to report the number of removed signatures to the state, and if 130,000 signatures are not removed, the recall moves to the Department of Finance, which will estimate the costs of the recall election. The Joint Legislative Budget Committee will then have 30 days to review and comment on the estimate. And then the Secretary of State will certify that there are enough valid signatures to qualify the recall for the ballot. Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis would set the date of the recall election within 60 to 80 days after that. The recall ballot will have two parts. In the first part, voters would have the option to vote yes or no to the question of whether to remove Governor Newsom from office. In the second part, the voter would have the opportunity to select a replacement candidate, and those votes for a successor candidate would only be counted if more than 50% of voters casting ballots in the election recall say yes to recalling Governor Newsom. An official date for the recall election has not yet been set, but if the signature count is verified, it is expected to be held in late fall. If the recall election happens, Governor Newsom would become only the second governor in California history to face one. The first was Governor Gray Davis in 2003. Davis was voted out. Will Governor Newsom survive his recall? Garry South was Gray Davis's senior political advisor and joins us with his advice for the current governor. Garry, the conditions are obviously different in comparing your former boss, Gray Davis, and Governor Gavin Newsom. For one, as you know, Governor Newsom's job approval rating is double what Governor Davis had when he was recalled. But Governor Newsom's political opponents were able to gather more than 1.5 million signatures to force this recall. Are Republicans wrong when they say that Governor Newsom is vulnerable?
Well, I believe they are. And remember that the only reason that they accumulated as many signatures as they needed to qualify this was because a Republican judge in Sacramento gave them 120 extra days to collect the signatures. If they'd had to abide by the 160-day time frame that is in the law, this thing would not have come close to qualifying.
Let me move on to another aspect of the recall, and that is the fact that Willie Brown, the former mayor of San Francisco and Assembly Speaker, is among those who are saying Democrats have to give Democratic voters an alternative to Governor Newsom in this recall, just in case. Now, when Governor Davis was on the ballot, it was his own lieutenant governor and fellow Democrat, Cruz Bustamante, on the ballot. His message, as you know better than anyone, to voters essentially was, vote no on the recall, but vote for me just in case you throw out Gray Davis. You saw the effect of that campaign from the inside. What was the effect of that move by Mr. Bustamante?
There were two problems that Bustamante entering the race had for our campaign. First was that we tried to characterize that effort much like Newsom is doing as a Republican, recall attempt, which in fact it was, or a GOP power grab. All the terminology you've seen the Newsom people hang around this one, which is all accurate, by the way. But when Bustamante got into the race, what we found in our focus groups was that people would say in our focus groups, well, wait a minute, how can it be a Republican recall if his own Democratic lieutenant governor is running against him? Number two, Bustamante's presence on the replacement line on that ballot gave too many Democrats the feeling they could have a twofer. They could vote to replace Gray Davis on the recall line and then vote for Bustamante on the replacement line and replace a Democrat with a Democrat. As you know, Frank, that's not the way it worked out. So the notion, I wrote a piece in Cal Matters last week, basically saying a Democrat should not run because it complicates. You cannot go to the voters with an oxymoronic campaign slogan like no on recall, yes on Bustamante, or yes on anyone else. Voters do not understand the nuances of a recall campaign. And voters in 2003 found that extremely confusing, and it hurt Davis's ability to beat the recall, pure and simple. And anyone who disagrees with that should come back and tell you what their qualifications are for having been involved in that 2003 recall. Otherwise, they're blowing smoke out of their hat.
Some of the Republicans who are going to be on the ballot are Kevin Faulconer, the former mayor of San Diego, Doug Osee, former Congressman John Cox, the businessman who ran against Governor Newsom in 2018. Of those men, or the other names you've seen so far, is there one that if you were advising Governor Newsom, you'd say, watch out for him, that you see as the most dangerous?
No, because there is no Schwarzenegger equivalent going to be on this ballot, because there is no other Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was sui generis. And remember, the way the recall works is if the governor beats the recall on the first line, yes or no, it's a yes or no vote. He's got to get 50% plus one of the vote in order to beat the recall. If he beats the recall on that first line, which I believe he will do handily, it doesn't matter how the candidates on the replacement line stack up. It doesn't matter how many votes anyone gets, because they're never going to be governor. And this is not going to be, for the reasons you stated, not going to be a replay of 2003 for all kinds of reasons. And by the way, equating Caitlyn Jenner to Arnold Schwarzenegger, which I've seen some do, is kind of like comparing Britney Spears to Barbara Streisand. I mean, there is simply no equivalence between Schwarzenegger's status in 2003 and Caitlyn Jenner standing in 2001. We find out she didn't even vote the last time we elected a governor in 2018, and she didn't even vote in the recall itself in 2003. She has no equivalent electoral experience to Arnold Schwarzenegger to bring to the voters in 2021.
Coming up, in his rebuttal to President Biden's address to Congress, Republican Senator Tim Scott said America is, quote, not a racist country, while California Congressmember Maxine Waters says he must have missed a history lesson.
And we won't ignore what our intelligence agencies have determined to be the most lethal terrorist threat to the homeland today. White supremacy is terrorism. We're not going to ignore that either. My fellow Americans, look, we have to come together to heal the soul of this nation.
President Joe Biden calling for Americans to come together to defeat racism and white supremacy during his first joint address to Congress. Joining us now, Democratic Congressmember Maxine Waters. Senator Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina, did the Republican rebuttal last night. I want to play some of the sound and what he said in terms of race and America not being a racist country, and get you to react on the other side.
From colleges to corporations to our culture, people are making money and gaining power by pretending we haven't made any progress at all, by doubling down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal. You know this stuff is wrong. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country.
Is America not a racist country?
Well, you know, I don't know if he was counseled to say that or whether he really believes that. If he really believes that, then he has missed not only the history of the country, but what is going on right now. As we watched the invasion of the Capitol on January 6th, and those people following Trump saying they were taking back their government and they were willing to harm people. As a matter of fact, not only were they willing to harm people for the Capitol Police, who happened to be people, police of color, African American, they were calling them names, the N-word. Every day we have seen, this nation get more racist than anybody thought perhaps would be at this point in time. We've been through the civil rights movement where, of course, we made some progress, but this president that we had, Trump, was taking us backwards. And he was making racist comments. He was, identifying himself with people like the Ku Klux Klan and the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and the QAnon. I mean, that is racism defined in the most obvious way. And so to say that this is not a racist country, maybe he meant to say that there are many people who are not racist in this country, but yes, we have a problem with racism and that we must work to do something about it. Maybe that's what he meant to say. He didn't say it, and it's kind of unexpected that he would be so, adamant in the way that he said it. This is not a racist country. I think that even some people who did not think so in recent years are now understanding that it is, and that we've got to deal with it. We've got to do something about it. And public policy is extraordinarily important in all aspects of our government to begin to legislate in ways that will do away with the exclusion, the undermining that has really put racism into the system, systemic racism.
Finally, I have to ask you, there was a moment after the president's speech last night where you were talking face to face. What did you say to him?
I was saying, I'm so proud of you. That was a wonderful speech. I'm feeling really good. And he was very, average in terms of not saying, oh yeah, I think I did good or whatever. He was just kind of saying, and how are you doing? And I'm looking forward to us working together on many of those issues, some of which I worked with when I was in the Senate. So it was just a nice, pleasant conversation with the President of the United States, who had just wowed us with a wonderful speech for all of America.
We will leave it there. Congressmember Maxine Waters, thank you for your time.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Coming up, an inside look at why California's population is decreasing and the effect it's having on our state's political power. California is one of the states losing a congressional seat due to new census data. So here's a look at the changes coming across the nation. The states in blue are losing seats. The states in red gaining seats. Joining us now is the director of California Complete Count, Ditas Katagi. Ditas, welcome to Inside California Politics. Great to talk to you. Of course, the big news this week, California losing a congressional seat, the first time this has happened in history. So why did this happen? Is it because more people are moving out of state, or people just didn't take part in the census?
Well, you know, I led our California Census Outreach and Communications campaign, and it made a significant impact. We reached all kinds of audiences across the state, particularly despite all the challenges that we faced in 2020. We got over 10.5 million households to self-respond, which is more than any other state. And basically 2.5 million of them were in our hardest to count households. So we think that we've done a great job. The state responded 69.6%, self-responded. It surpassed the entire nation. So people will say, oh, people are leaving California, but that's not true. We just had a slower growth rate. So when you think about, I'm a perfect example of this. California has one of the highest enrollment rates in colleges and postdoc and continuing to be educated. And when you tend to do that, you prolong getting married or having children. I had my daughter at 38, so I was not about to have another one in my 40s. So it does slow the growth. So naturally, people aren't leaving in droves. We just weren't growing as faster because of a lot of the achievements that are happening here in the state.
In terms of outreach to the undocumented Californians, what kind of challenge did that pose to getting them to respond? Because there's always the fear of deportation.
Yes, since 2018, when the last administration introduced that they wanted to, at the very last minute, put in the citizenship question, across the nation, advocates and here in California, we knew that was going to be an issue whether it got on or it didn't. It didn't go on, of course. But people still were afraid because there was a lot of attention based on that. So we used our over 150 partners we had across the state who were really trusted messengers in the community to portray that message, to convey that message that there was, nothing to worry about, and that the citizenship question was not on there, and that there wasn't a chance using the census data to deport them. So it was really we had to combat a lot of misinformation and fear that was out there, and our partners that were trusted messengers in the community did a great job.
All right, let's talk about redistricting. And is there any way to predict where this seat is going to be lost? And there's talk about LA, Central Valley, Orange County. Is there any way to know at this point?
Well, the data that was released on Monday was just like, what's the population of California and the rest of, the rest of the states in the nation. The data that's going to be released later this summer in August and September, that's going to have more details about where are all the population. And that's going to be really left up to our California Redistricting Commission, because they draw the lines. And so a lot of people are predicting and they're running, what they think is out there. But until that data comes out, it's probably a little bit harder to do. I think the best thing that people can do, like they did in terms of standing up and being counted, is to participate in the redistricting efforts, because it's an open process and we really want people to be involved to make sure not only was their voice heard when they were counted, but now it's going to be heard about how do they draw the lines, how are they actually represented, how are those districts going to be drawn.
Ditas Katagi, Director of the California Complete Count. Appreciate your time here on Inside California Politics.
Thank you so much.
And the new census numbers are also changing the Electoral College map. California now has 54 Electoral College votes instead of 55. Coming up, 3 of our political analysts break down President Biden's first joint address to Congress. In President Biden's first joint address to Congress this week, he made a big push for his multi-trillion-dollar economic agenda. Right after the speech, our correspondent Catherine Heenan hosted a special streaming edition of Inside California Politics with analysis.
It was an unusual address in many ways. What did the president hope to accomplish, and did this work for him? David, I'm going to start with you.
Look, this is an incredible speech. It's expansive, it's activist, it's about, in some ways, an old Democratic Party in terms of expanding lots of different ideas. At the same time, trying to push forward the narrative about how many issues are related to social justice, like high-speed internet access, like access to clean water, and joining those things.
Republicans have accused Biden of a bait and switch. I mean, he did campaign on the notion that he could and would work with Republicans. They're saying that's not happening. Did you hear anything tonight that changes that perception?
Well, I heard a number of things tonight where he did reference and say, I'm willing to work with all sides, anybody who has an opinion, which is what you hear every president say, to be honest, So I don't know that I heard anything tonight that would change that perception. Sounds great in substance, but like all presidents, you just have to wait and see.
All right, Michael Yockey, your turn. What did you think of the speech?
What's interesting, this is a president who many people characterize, and in fact, he even said that he was a transitional figure. But I don't think that they figured out that the transition was back to the New Deal. That this is a president who has decided that the era of small government is one that has created limited opportunities, that has curbed our ability to compete in the world. And he's decided, I'm going big. And this is what the speech was about. It was about going big.
And you can see our full streaming special online, as well as our interviews. Just head to your local station's website and click on the Inside California Politics tab.
Thanks for watching Inside California Politics.
We'll see you back here next weekend.